It is so great to have this panel on with us this evening. We have an amazing topic, a very important topic. We know that March 21st is National World Down Syndrome Day, and we know that this month is also Developmental Disabilities Month. So we want to talk about it because our communities are disproportionately affected. We want to talk about sort of what it's like to raise a child with a developmental disability or perhaps with some type of syndrome. So on the couch this evening, we have Allison. How do I pronounce it? Parton. Am I saying that correctly?
Yeah.
I was going to call you by your maiden name. So clearly she's a friend of mine. So we have Allison Parton on the couch with us this evening. She is a mom of a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful baby boy. And she's going to tell us a little bit more about her experience. I'm not going to give you the cues. She's going to release the information for you this evening. But we're so happy to have her on the couch because not only is she a mom, she's many things. We're going to focus on two of her titles for this evening. She's also a labor and delivery nurse. So welcome to the couch, Allison. I've been trying to get you on this couch for the longest. I'm so happy I finally got myself together to get you on the couch this evening.
Oh, thank you.
Welcome,
It's long
welcome
overdue.
to the HBC virtual couch. And another friend of mine who have also been trying to get on the couch, but I was trying to figure out a topic to get her on the couch. And I am so happy to have my friend and my colleague, Dr. Calderon, on the couch with us this evening, who has worked in public health, so she knows the real deal, okay? She is a pediatrician. Dr. Calderon, thank you for joining the couch this evening. I'm going to refer to you by your professional name because we are dealing with professional topic this evening. Welcome to the couch, Dr. Calderon. It's so good to have you on with us.
Thank you. So happy to be here.
Awesome. So one of the things that I thought was really striking, you guys, I was looking at some of the statistics and I noticed that there was a recent stat, I think I got this from the CDC, I'm pretty sure it was the CDC, that said that they're increasing or quoting increasing rates of certain types of developmental disabilities, such as autism, increasing rates of ADHD, and Down syndrome. Are we seeing truly increasing rates, or are we just better at diagnosing and recognizing these particular types of disabilities? What do you guys think?
What do I think? I think, well, there are certain ones that are, you can't really miss. Like, you can't really miss Down syndrome, So, but I think maybe in terms of spectrum disorders, it may be a matter of recognizing them a little bit more, as opposed to just dismissing them as, strange behavior or something like that, but just recognizing. So I don't know if it is that it's happening more often, or if it is people are just more aware of them right now, ADHD and whatnot, just more aware of them and labeling them correctly.
That you mentioned also, you can't miss Down syndrome. Now, I know why we shouldn't miss Down syndrome, but tell us more about that. What do you mean by that? That we can't miss Down syndrome?
Well, I mean, I know it's a syndrome, so there's different, it's going to present differently in different people. But the majority of people who have Down syndrome, you're going to see the way that they look. Their faces look different. Their ability to speak is different. Their ability to function is different. They're not moving as well as everyone else, and they're not. They're delayed in their development, so it's not like someone's gonna notice at 5 years old, hey, something's a little different. It's usually something you see within the first year, because I know that sometimes it is dependent, like if it's mosaic Down syndrome or something like that, it may take a little bit longer to be diagnosed, but eventually it's going to be pretty obvious.
Pretty recognizable because there's so many aspects to it. And I know from a obstetrical perspective, we actively screen for Down syndrome. Dr. Calderon, on your end, are you seeing increasing numbers? What's your experience been?
I do think we have better tools now to screen for things like autism and ADHD and other behavioral issues and concerns that arise. And I personally feel that people are welcoming more of the mental health aspect of healthcare as a whole. And so, even in the traditional well child visits, we have screening tools for autism at 18 months and 24 months that we screen regardless of whatever the concerns may be. And I'm not sure if that was the case 10, 15 years ago, but
Mm-hmm.
there's so much more research, so much more literature now about what it means to be have autism, or what it means to have ADHD. And also, there are so many more stresses, I think, in the lives of children now, right? We have social media, school, COVID, distance learning, and all these, changing aspects of living in our world today. And I'm not sure how everyone else practices, but there are plenty of behavioral questions that you should talk to your pediatrician or family medicine or whoever provider you see aren't going as expected, or if you feel something is off, if the child's
Mm-hmm.
not sleeping well. So I definitely think there's more screening tools, and that's why I feel that we're seeing it more now, because there's a label and there's more help too.
Do you ladies think that it's the change is coming and the momentum for this change is coming from the parents? Are parents just more aware and more open to getting their child screened? Or is it coming from the professional aspect where we're standardizing and normalizing these screening tools that people are then accepting as because it's becoming more normal to see these types of testing being done?
I
What?
definitely think it's coming from the professional side. I do. Uh, I think that there may still be the rush to expect the child to behave a certain way, and
Mm-hmm.
then once you go into the from the parents, and then you go into get regular checkups, and you acknowledge certain things, and then you realize, oh, maybe this is not necessarily how things should be done. Maybe my child should be able to do this thing at this age and they're not, or this behavior is something that is indicative of something of an issue,
Mm-hmm.
like they're throwing tantrums constantly. In the past, or even still now, sometimes some parents may just simply try to discipline that. You go, you get your checkup, you do the screenings like Dr. Calderon was saying, and then it's a realization that, hey, this is something that we can acknowledge. This is something that we can do something about, other than just putting them in timeout or something like that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. You're so right. I remember growing up that oftentimes you would have neighborhood kids or a kid even in a family that's a little bit different. And we have just a multitude of descriptives that we've used, right? Um, do you guys feel that now that culturally things are shifting and we're starting to see more acceptance, or do we still have, is it still a stigma to have a child with a developmental delay? Are parents taking this on as a personal failure, for example? What usually is the response of a parent receiving this type of diagnosis?
I think it's a combination of both. There are definitely some parents who, um, when I see them for a well child visit, they'll say, my child is doing this when they get very upset, or they're not speaking at 2. And, I'm concerned about autism. I read about this and I'm hearing about this on social media, on TikTok, whatever it may be.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are other parents who the child doesn't speak at all and is 3, and I
Mm-hmm.
bring it up and there is some resistance, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I think the important thing is to meet the parents where they're at, but
Mm-hmm.
also to get the child the resources that are needed and necessary to help the child fulfill their potential. It's still something, as a pediatrician, I try to kind of um, see where parents are at, because some parents do get offended, some do shut down and they say there's nothing wrong with my kid, I don't know what you're talking about, my kid's
Mm-hmm.
fine, my kid will talk when they want, I didn't speak until I was 4. So I still see that quite a bit, and that's it's sometimes, most of the time, I do get them on board to, okay, that's fine, that's probably the case for your child too, but let's get them into speech therapy to make sure. Let's get a hearing test to make sure. And most of the time, when I just kind of meet them halfway, they're willing to accept the additional screening tools and resources to help. And of course, there are other parents that I want to start now. At a year, they're not talking. I want to get started now.
Mm-hmm.
There's a spectrum, I feel.
So is this from your perspective, is this something that, so you are meeting the child for the first time and you're kind of like, noticing some interesting traits? Is this something you introduced with the first visit, or is this something that you're sort of starting to evaluate but not necessarily introducing the thought yet? Like, do you build relationship first with the parent? What's your approach for that?
It's difficult when they're there for a well child because the development is pretty much the focus of the visit, at least from my standpoint. And
Mm-hmm.
if they come for like a sick visit and they're concerned about a cold or they caught COVID, and I clearly see that the child is not where they should be developmentally, I just ask a few questions and I say, we should follow up when the kid is healthy and doing well so we can address other concerns. When the child is there for a physical, I bring it up because that's my job, right? That they're there to make sure that they're growing well, both physically and developmentally. And if there is resistance to acknowledging the delay, then I do say, okay, let's talk about this again in a few weeks. We'll see. I give them little benchmarks. Read to the child every day, 15 minutes. Let's see if instead of saying 2 words, they can do 4 words in a month. And
Mm-hmm.
if they meet that, then perfect. We can continue monitoring. But if not, we should consider something else. Um, yeah, I think every parent is a little bit different and every
Mm-hmm.
family dynamic is different and the different resources available within the family unit. And I try my best to get buy-in from the other family members involved in the child's, social element.
Gotcha, gotcha. That's very interesting. I wonder, what is it like, or what things should we take into consideration, Allison, for when we are approaching a parent, a mom, a grandparent who may be guardian over a child who has displayed some type of traits? Like, what types of things should we consider from the professional perspective?
Uh, I think, and I think probably based on what Dr. Calderon is saying, she's doing that. But I think it's definitely important to take into account or to try to gauge families' feelings towards the whatever issue it is that is being observed.
Mm-hmm.
So there are some families, there are some parents or who, oh, there's this disability, there's this delay. Okay, let me get on it. Let's figure out what needs to be done or anything like that. But then there are some families who definitely feel a lot of shame,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
unfortunately. And so, uh, and I think, like I said, Dr. Calderon is the way that she approaches it makes absolute sense. Once you're gauging and seeing like where does this family sit with this, where is this mother sitting with this in terms of what their beliefs are concerning whatever disability you may be observing, then you go from there.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. What is it like to receive that type of news? Like, what is it like to hear um, these type of diagnoses from a parent's perspective?
Well, so I got the diagnosis in when I was still pregnant. So
Mm,
um and it was a very strange feeling. It's so I was already having a very, very difficult pregnancy.
mm-hmm,
And so the diagnosis of Down syndrome just kind of broke the camel's back. Like that was the one thing that broke me. It was like, it's one thing to have a difficult pregnancy. It's another thing to expect my child to have a difficult life.
mm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So it was very, and I had to have her I found out about the day after, I think, that I had a cerclage put in. So, I'd just done this procedure to
Mm-hmm.
keep the baby in, and then I'm
Right.
told that he's gonna have Down syndrome, and termination was suggested.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, well, that's insane. I just went through this whole process to keep him in.
That's
You know,
interesting.
I'm
Yeah.
not going to
Yeah.
evict him now.
Yeah.
Uh,
And
yeah, so it's I guess it's standard to recommend or suggest or present as an option termination, but it was kind of like if I just went through this process to keep him in,
right.
am I really going to try to get rid of him now?
Right.
It's like
You raised a very, very something you said I thought was very striking. So as a mom, your mindset is the pregnancy is tough. I can accept the challenges of going through the pregnancy, but the
Mhm.
challenges of but having the perspective of the expected potential life of your child and that
Right.
being challenged, that was hard to accept. How did you work through those thoughts?
Well, I'm still working through them, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to be working through them for the remainder of my life.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Because it's like a constant grieving process. Uh, while on one hand, I love my kid. I'm so grateful for him. Um, I, I I love him to pieces. On the
Mm-hmm.
other hand, it hits me sometimes. It's like, he's never gonna be able to run for president. It's not gonna happen. And
Mm-hmm.
so you hear that and you just immediately start grieving the baby that you thought you were gonna have.
Mm-hmm.
And it comes and goes. It comes and goes like grief, right? Sometimes you're
Yes.
grieving, and sometimes you're just in a puddle on the floor,
Yeah.
and that's
Yeah.
still the case. That's still the case. He's full
So,
of joy, but it's also like your
but
life isn't
you're very much aware of the potential life, right? Did you
right.
receive what type of aid and assistance did you receive? And I'm going to also ask Dr. Calderon, when you're delivering this type of news, is it standard also? Because Allison said something that I thought is very key. Like a lot of people, and something that I actually share with my patients is when I do have to give this type of news and deliver this type of news, and knowing the impact it has on the image and the vision that a woman has for her child, that it can also be coupled with the grieving process, and sometimes also be a trigger for underlying mental health issues as well. So when you deliver this type of news, what is your approach, and do you evaluate for these types of things as well? I'm going to start with Allison, just sharing what would be sort of your comment to moms who are experiencing and parents in general, because dads do grieve also. Um, what would be your comment to someone receiving this news, and how should they process it? And then Dr. Calderon.
That's that's a tough one. That is a really tough one to how to process this news.
Or what resources should they seek?
Right. Yeah. My approach, oddly enough, based on me, I'm pretty much a loner. But I found a group on Facebook, parents of children with Down syndrome, and it is just the best thing. And so I've seen a lot of parents who just, as soon as they find out, as soon as they get the diagnosis, they just jump straight onto the group. Like, we just got the diagnosis today. And the support is amazing because you'll get everyone as soon as a new parent comes in there and says, my child has Down syndrome, the first words out of everyone's mouth is congratulations, welcome.
Oh, I love
And it's
that.
absolutely lovely. It's such a supportive group. Their pictures and videos and everything being shown. So my suggestion would be
Mhm.
to find find your tribe immediately. Immediately. And I don't really do groups, but I love that parents of children with Down syndrome group. And then there's an offshoot, Black families of children with Down syndrome. the same thing. Just love, support. Everyone is posting their kids, and it's just no one is made to feel ashamed or alone.
I love
It's
that.
Yeah, it's a beautiful, beautiful community. So my approach is just find the support, and it is
Mm-hmm.
there. It's
Mm-hmm.
there.
I love
Um,
that.
yeah.
I totally love that. I'm gonna leave save my comments until Dr. Calderon. How do you approach that? Because she's right. I do find a lot of parents when I do have to deliver the news of whether it's Down syndrome, some other type of syndrome, or even just congenital defects. Like when you deliver those news, do you evaluate from the grieving perspective? What type of resources do you provide?
When I see the babies, usually it's at the newborn visit right after they've delivered, and most of the time, I think all of the babies I have as patients with Down syndrome, they were they screened positive, so the parents had the remainder of the pregnancy to process the news, and by the time I see them in clinic, they're still processing, and they're still, like she said, sometimes grieving. And I just ask where they're at. And I ask, what do you understand? What questions do you have? And what do you envision for your baby? And I do love social media for that. A lot of moms have said the same thing that you did, that they found support groups within different social media outlets. And there's in Los Angeles, there's a Down syndrome Los Angeles Association, I believe, who also connects families together so that they can support each other. Um, Sometimes some parents feel like guilt, like, what did I do about this? And
Mm-hmm.
I try my best to reassure them nothing, right? And I also do
Mm.
postpartum screening. So I definitely do that screen for the newborn parents, and we talk about that. And I check in with them. I do see the newborns with Down syndrome more often than I would other babies, just to check in, because I know it's a lot to process, and there's a lot
Mm-hmm.
of questions too. Um, and and pretty much just getting the parents comfortable with me and my staff so that they feel that they have at least somewhere to go if they have questions.
Yeah, yeah. I totally love that. And I love the fact that these support groups exist for all those who be hating on social media. And sometimes I hate on social media too. However, there are some positives in social media, and this is one of those examples. And I truly believe, like children who are affected by Down syndrome, I truly believe they're the purest source of love in this world. So that just really touched my heart to hear of the pictures and the videos being posted and the celebration of life. And I do think life should be celebrated. I like the fact that Allison, you said find your tribe. And I'm going to co-sign that and put an addendum and say find your tribe even before you give birth. Find your tribe in your planning of your pregnancy. Because really, to your point, Allison, a lot of these diagnoses are really unexpected, right? You're doing all the great things. You're doing everything that you think is right, and you are doing right, and you're eating well, and you're exercising, you're checking things off the list, you're going to your appointments, and here's this unexpected diagnosis out of nowhere, right? They're like, is somebody in our family? Ain't nobody in our family. Like, where did this come from, right? Not just with Down syndrome, just speaking to in general different types of genetic disorders. And so oftentimes, at the time that you're dealing with sort of this information, it's really challenging to figure out who should be in your tribe. You know, Sometimes parents have to deal with not only their grieving process, but then delivering the news to everyone else, right? So now you have to tell the family members and they go through their own grieving process, right? And so sometimes I think for me, looking at a lot of my moms, it really helps to have your tribe even before. So I love that you said that. And I think it's so key, so that you know who you can go to first. Sometimes you need somebody to be the mouthpiece, right? That you tell that one person and then they share with the rest of the family with your permission. With your permission.
Mhm.
folks, with permission. Okay. And so I do think finding the tribe, whether it's through support group, through family members, because sometimes family members are not necessarily the best support group, not because they're not supportive, but because they're also grieving. And sometimes it's heavy to deal with somebody else's grief while you're dealing with your own. So thank you, ladies, for sharing those resources that are available and out there, and sort of these tips. If you see a child that may have some peculiar behavior or unusual behavior or just delayed in development, oftentimes in our communities, like even things like stuttering and stammering is overlooked, right? We kind of, it's just kind of like the thing. It's just, oh, she just stutters, and I'm someone who also had to overcome stuttering myself. And what a lot of people don't realize is oftentimes you miss other things. You miss developmental issues, but you can also miss trauma as well. Some people stutter as a result of trauma that they haven't dealt with. So what are some of the subtle signs, Dr. Calderon, that people sometimes overlook? And I know for a Black, what's interesting, one stats that I saw is in the Black community that we have a higher prevalence of stammering and stuttering. And I think part of that is because culturally we tend to overlook it and think it's just, it's like having that extra finger or having, a skin tag or extra moles, and it's not. It can be a sign, or, well, I have you explain it. You're the pediatrician. So, what should we know about things that are usually culturally accepted, but maybe potential signs
As far as a sign
of
being
developmental delays? Because sometimes we overlook. I think in our community, we tend to overlook things that maybe someone else in the family had and never got treatment, and it's just like, oh, you're just like Uncle John. Well,
yeah,
Uncle John may have had an undiagnosed developmental delay, and this may be the same thing that your child is experiencing. So, what are some of the things that you think we should really look out for those who are parents, and even those who are family members? Because sometimes, as a family member, you may be observant of certain things that maybe a mom may not necessarily see, or a dad may not necessarily see.
I think extremes would be something to keep an eye on. So, what I mean by that is behavior. So, behavior, especially, I think little boys more so than girls, when they're very hyperactive and getting into a lot of trouble. Sometimes it's just, oh, he's a boy, he's fine, he's supposed to do that. And it's dismissed as that. And it's not until they start in school where, the teacher has some concerns and, they're not meeting the grades that they should be getting, or whatever marks they call them now.
Mm-hmm.
uh, and for others, other children, it's more of they're spacing out, right? They look like a little bit distracted, and sometimes like, oh, they're just daydreaming, they're playing, with the butterflies, going around. um, and also sleep is important too. So if a child is having a difficult time with sleep, I think something else might be going on, and something to be explored further.
Wow. I think that's a mic drop moment. Sleep. That's interesting. I talk to my patients all the time about sleep, and don't judge me because y'all know I don't sleep very well, but I'm working on it. Okay. I do know the importance of sleep, and I'm working on it. It is a priority for me. However, it is a topic that I talk about with my patients. Is so important to health, right? But I did not know that sleep can be an indication of an underlying condition in a child. That's super good to know. Wow, I'm going to share that with folks. I love that point. Any final points that you guys would have for families that may be dealing with the developmental disabilities or specifically Down syndrome? Anything you want to share? Any final thoughts for our viewers?
Well, I did want to say that just kind of going back to the diagnosis of things,
Mm-hmm.
of Down syndrome, I was actually a little sad that I got a pre-birth diagnosis because it
Mm-hmm.
made the rest of the pregnancy
Right.
not as enjoyable.
Hmm.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's just something to consider
That's a good point.
when dealing moms. I would have I in hindsight and whatever, I think I would have preferred a birth diagnosis. But then again, I also might have just lost my mind then. So who knows?
Mm-hmm,
But
mm-hmm.
just to say that I kind of, if I had to do it all over again, I probably would, you know,
That
not
is
want it.
such another mic drop moment.
Yeah.
Another mic drop moment. And why, especially, I like that you mentioned that, and I'm so thankful that you brought that up, is because you do have bonding issues, right? When moms also have um, difficult pregnancies for a multitude of things, difficult pregnancies, a prior pregnancy that had a poor outcome or unexpected outcome, undesired outcome. I hate to say the word poor. It's a ICD diagnosis, but an unexpected outcome or unfavorable outcome. It is easy to disconnect, and as clinicians, that's something I look for in my moms is, are you bonding with the pregnancy? I think that's so huge. Are you staying in the moment? Are you still being present with the pregnancy? I love that you mentioned that. And to something that you brought up earlier, I find your story to be so one inspiring and so interesting also, from just a clinical perspective as well, because this is why people always ask, for scheduled cyclages, why do we wait to do them? Why don't we do them immediately in the first trimester and things like that? And it's because we want to make sure, as much as we can do in evaluating the pregnancy, that the pregnancy has no red flags, right? Nothing that is coming up abnormal, so that you give parents the opportunity to make those very, very hard decisions. And so ideally, not all cyclages are scheduled. Sometimes they're emergent cyclages and you don't have the availability to have that decision making. But for those who are, right, for emergent cyclages, it's a much different scenario. But for women who have a history that may be indicative of an incompetent cervix, or I hate the word incompetent, insufficient cervix is the new word, but that's also a word I don't like. But cervical issues, we got,
There we go.
with all the words we have in the English language, some of the words that we use, but with
So
women who,
judgmental.
right, it is, it's so biased, but that's a whole other topic. Because if you guys get me on that topic, I'm not going to stop. But but there is so many you know, pregnancies that are affected by recurrent pregnancy losses. So we kind of know in advance the next pregnancy, this person may likely benefit from a cyclage, but not all circumstances are like that. But for women who do have these types of challenges, that's why we wait until after the first trimester. That's why we try to do the genetic testing before. That's why we try to get certain imaging, ultrasounds, and studies done, so that we give parents the opportunity, if there be a diagnosis such as Down syndrome, to make that very hard decision on continuing the pregnancy. Yeah. So Dr. Calderon, any final thoughts for our viewers?
For I think early intervention is important for the baby. So the sooner we can get the baby connected to resources and the family as a whole, I think that would lead to, you know, the greatest potential for the baby and the family too.
And when you say early intervention, explain for our viewers, what is that and why does it make a difference? Like, some people are like, does it really make a difference? Am I really going to see a better outcome?
So babies, their brain growth is most rapid from 0 to 2 years old. And so the more stimulation the baby has, the more resources like speech therapy, occupational therapy, floor time therapy, regional centers are a great tool. And all
Mm-hmm.
babies with Down syndrome qualify for resources for the age of 3. So definitely something to include for the baby as part as they grow and develop. And after they're 3, they have rights as, you know, citizens with disability through the school district as well. And just the sooner we start, the more we can, you know, practice, right? Practice makes perfect. So the more
Right.
resources from the beginning really does help.
Awesome. Awesome. You guys are dropping these knowledge bombs. I love it. Listen, HBC family, you have heard it here. They have left you with resources. We have support groups. We have resources, regional centers. You have the information on coverage. I mean, we gave you just about everything we can, but our liver and our kidneys. Okay. So we thank you, ladies, for being on the virtual couch with us and dropping all of these just amazing. But I'm yeah, they gonna have me sit in the corner and think a little bit more on this and my approach to patients. So thank you so much for your knowledge and sharing your personal experiences with developmental disabilities, and specifically spending time to talk about Down syndrome. I love you guys for being on the couch. This is Dr. T, the hand behind the handle of Healthy Bump Club. You can find us on Instagram at healthybump.club. And you can find us right here on IG. Make sure you watch our next video. It's going to pop up in the corner, one of these corners. Make sure you check out our next video, and follow us, and make sure you like, comment, and share. This is how we get our videos in front of the crowd, so that the parents that really need this information will be able to see it. The more you comment, the more you like, the more you share, is the more people get to see this type of valuable information. We thank you guys for watching, and we see you on the next episode. We out of here. Bye.